everybody. I'm laughing because I know I sometimes say, hello Winnie, hello Beatrice. And today I got into a Zoom and someone in the Zoom said to me, hello Winnie, hello Beatrice. So now I think that's kind of funny that I'm saying that, but hello Winnie and hello Beatrice and hello to all of you. I have a quick story to share, but I don't have a guest tonight. So meet me at the bench and we'll have a quick chat. So, how's everybody today? I don't know if I can hear the clicking of all the computers turning off because I don't have a guest this evening, but I thought I would not pressure the staff so much to expect someone to come on with me every single night, and instead just maybe have a quick moment with the kids, meaning our students, to just talk about a few things. We are getting, now we're past mid-April, and we have some things to plan and things to think about. I'll be pushing more and more emails out to the families and to the students to discuss some of the things that we are still hopeful for, and to discuss some of the things perhaps that we have made a decision about no longer keeping. But for the purposes of this video series, I want to keep it upbeat, and I want to keep my message going to everyone, to keep everybody wrapped around the community that is the middle school, and I hope that's what it's doing. I did want to share a few things today and let you know that I spent the weekend, well, not the whole weekend, it took me about 40 minutes, and I made a bunch of these little, for lack of a better word, little wooden figures that I had talked about in a previous episode of the video that we did. And I went on a Zoom with Winnie, and I watched as she watched me stack these things. And is that better maybe? Yeah. And so I was stacking these things in the living room, and she was watching, and I asked her if she knew what a challenge was, and she didn't quite know what a challenge was. So I said to her, a challenge would be, if I could jump 6 times, could you jump 7 times? And she got off the couch and jumped 7 times, and she's really good at counting for someone who's 4 years old, and pretty good at jumping too. So she got off the couch and jumped 7 times. And then her father explained to her that challenge isn't always jumping, it could be other things. And so I stacked some of these little guys for her like I did just now. And I challenged her to see if she could make a stack this high. And I took a picture of the stack, and now what I need to do is, and in case she's better than me, I made more. A minor little army of what I've come to call this halfer deal. And it lends itself to today's talk because I've always tried to, let's back up. When I was young, a lot of the reading that went on in the Geiger household was from a book of fables and a book of nursery rhymes. And a lot of those things wrapped around explanations for things that occur in nature. Why the sun has rays, why the moon is where it is, and all those kinds of things. Some of them were exaggerations. The cow, I'm guessing, never really did jump over the moon. But some of those things led you to be, to be a thoughtful human being, and it made you pause and wonder about some things. And what I did with this story when I created these little guys is I talked to my kids years ago about how when you go out and chase fireflies in the grass, probably they're all fireflies, but some of those lights in the grass could be very small creatures who have started very small fires in the grass. And wouldn't it be neat to see if that were true? And what was the story behind these guys? And that really is what led me on the path to thinking of the story of these guys. And it's become kind of a joke, if you will, amongst my adult children who think I'm still kind of a little bit obsessed with these things. But last year when Winnie was at the house, I took her in the backyard and I did not tell her that these things were here. And I told her the story of the fireflies in the grass. And I said, maybe we could find some of these creatures. Now, being a 3-year-old, she was lost. The whole story was lost to her. But what I did tell her was that we might be able to find these little figurines, these little men hiding in the grass. And they were all painted. These have just brown backs because they're just made out of wood. But those that I had in the backyard at the time were all green. And she had a great time in the yard and finding them, getting more and more excited when she found them. So, that was my story for her that day. And one of the things I thought about, and Mrs. Geiger and I were thinking about for this weekend coming up, is to go down and do a visit, appropriately distancing ourselves from them, if Winnie can understand why we won't be able to give her a big hug. But I thought it might be fun for me to go put these, if it's a sunny day, to go hide these around the yard and give her something to do, and then she can stack and see what she can do as far as my challenge goes. So that's why I made so many of these this weekend, and we will see what happens to that this weekend. What I wanted to share with you also was a story written by Jerry Downs. Jerry Downs is a photographer, he's a writer, and he is a very thoughtful person who wrote a book called Why Were You Born? And this book was gifted to me by my sister, and she has a program where she interviews authors, and she interviewed Jerry, and when he was done talking to her about this book, she thought this book would be fabulous for me, and it kind of is right up my alley. And so she asked Jerry to dedicate the book to me, this copy. In other words, give me his signature. And he wrote, for Frank, thanks for being born, J. Downs. So I am also thankful that I was born. And I thought I would read a passage from this book today, based on the fact that if I told the stories that I would like to tell to our middle school students, I don't know if they would be as impressed as if when they come from a bona fide book. And, it was a joke years ago when I was in college that when your professor told you something, it was worthwhile, but it was your professor. But if someone came from a place other than your classroom to talk to you, if you had a guest speaker, the guest speaker was considered an expert. And if you knew that he was being paid to be there, you even paid more attention because, well, if they're paying him, this must be really important information. If the teacher tells you the information, of course you're going to take it as a valuable piece of information, especially if you're going to be tested on it later. But if you were taken to a separate room and you were put in front of a speaker who was being paid, who might have come from 50 miles away, well, that information was golden. So to impress that on the kids today, I thought I would share a passage from this book called Why Were You Born? It's only a single page long, and I thought I would read that to you. Once upon a time, just before dawn, out in the country called Wheat Ridge, Colorado, I was 4 years old. The nearest neighbors were across the street and a quarter-mile away. My neighbors, my parents, my 10 brothers and sisters were all asleep or not yet born. I was awake from a dream that told me to go outside and just listen. Except for the stars, it was pitch black. It took a minute for my eyes to see the beginnings of blue definition of the flat horizon of the Great Plains to the east. In the west, there were distant stars, but not the outline of the Rocky Mountains yet, 5 miles away. I ran through the alfalfa field and rested under a row of Russian olives. I listened to my heart, and then I heard the birds, just a few at first. There were meadowlarks mostly, answering one another, together in the dark, miles apart. It was not an alarm, just a friendly wake-up call. I wondered what the words were and wished that I could whistle like the birds, enough to say good morning to them. A rooster crowed, and the crows rose from their roost. They lit into the sky. The east was pink. The west was now turning blue. The birds were blacker than the sky. Starlings now flew where the stars had been. I could see the outline of the mountains and the trees, but not what lay beneath the black. I closed my eyes so I could better hear the birds. The volume was so loud I was convinced that every leaf on every branch had turned into a billion birds, each singing its own song. Perhaps it was only a million mockingbirds. I couldn't tell more or have cared less. I was overjoyed, so transfixed that all I could do was listen to the tune. I tried to think, what were they saying that they had so much to say and so wished to be heard? Were they just trying to wake up, or were they discussing their dreams from the night before they disappeared? Then my thoughts went away. My mind held only the harmony. I held a note, and it carried me through the trees and into the thin air. The sound was everywhere. Everyone was singing all at once, and then all at once it stopped. I opened my eyes and looked into the sun that had just cracked the horizon. I stared into the east, watching the earth turn sunny side up. I turned around to see the light of day on the scene that held only sound. I could see everything now, a whole range of mountains, all of the trees and every single leaf. All of the birds had disappeared, save a single meadowlark singing to someone unseen. As a boy of 4, same age as Winnie, it was no more of a mystery that the birds had turned themselves back into leaves than any other mystery I had witnessed, like the fact that there were birds and trees, that the sun rose, and I was there to see and hear it all. I went to feed the chickens and collect the eggs. They were still warm. I looked back at the trees and then up to the sky. It was now a beautiful robin egg blue. That's someone who took the time to look around. That was written by someone who took the time to observe the world around them, and someone who, as they say, stopped to smell the flowers along the way. It reminded me of a time when I did the same. And I came across this hummingbird's nest. This was in a tree in our yard, and all spring, while the little birds fed their young and hatched their eggs, I watched from a distance these little hummingbirds grow in this small nest. You can see from the size of my finger that barely fits inside the nest how small it is. I have a hex nut, which is a very small piece of metal, maybe 70% the size of a dime. And you can see if I drop it in there. So you can see, in relationship to this small piece of metal that's smaller than a dime, how big it is in comparison to the nest. These nests are so small. A quarter probably would not fit inside the nest. And I found this one day, and I took picture after picture after picture, and I eventually brought this to a faculty meeting when we discussed the power of small things and how it doesn't take a whole lot to make an impression on people, and how we should be working on the small things that would matter in our lives, when sometimes we concentrate way too much on the bigger things that matter. And so I just wanted to leave that message with you today, that if we are going to spend the rest of our time in this quarantine situation worried about the big future that's ahead of us all, I think we're wasting our energy doing that. I think we need to plan for our future, but we need to take all the time we've been given during this quarantine situation to appreciate the small things. And I guess that's it. Just take a moment and be thankful for the people around us and the small things around us that make up our lives. And we will get to those bigger things soon enough. But my message today is simply this: take care of yourselves, take care of your family, recognize what's important in your life, and those big picture things that we don't have any control over right now are okay, because they're in our future and they will be with us soon, and we will take care of those things. But for today, just go out, smell the flowers, take a walk around the yard, enjoy yourselves and enjoy each other. And tomorrow, I hope we will have a guest in the garage, and maybe we'll get back to doing a little bit of woodwork as well. Or that crazy idea I had for making sculpture. Who knows what's next? But until then, keep the faith and know that I care about you all very much. And until we are able to see each other in person, that's all for tonight. Thanks.